Hello everyone, my name is Jen Nolan and on behalf of Musculoskeletal Australia and the Active Neighbourhoods for Older Australians project, I'd like to warmly welcome you to our webinar today on the topic of models and strategies to engage carers in your physical activity programs. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which we are broadcasting today, the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's been a pretty tough year for many people, but it's certainly great news, especially here in Victoria, that the COVID numbers are now much more under control. Once again, we just want to acknowledge the great work that Neighbourhood Houses and Centres have done in their communities, supporting them and keeping many of their programs running. Don't forget to visit our MSK website, where you will find our Active Neighbourhoods for Older Australians webpage and lots of other resources, including the recordings of our previous webinars. On the MSK website, you'll also find an extensive range of information, films and videos, apart from our other initiatives and services such as our peer support groups, our MSK helpline on the number 1800 263 265. Our first presenter for today is Helen Carr. Helen is a carer and a community educator with Carers Victoria, and we are very grateful to Helen for assisting us with this presentation today. Thanks very much, Helen, and over to you.
Thank you, Jen. It's good to be here today. So Carers Victoria is recognised and funded as a statewide voice for carers and caring families in Victoria. We are a not-for-profit established in 1992 to represent, advocate and provide services for carers. We work collaboratively with Carers Australia and other state and territory-based carer associations. And when we talk about caring families, we include families of choice, same-sex relationships, also friends, neighbours and extended family who provide unpaid care for someone in their home and community. So the first slide has a question and it says, who are carers? So just to clarify, carers are people who provide unpaid care and support to family members and friends who have perhaps a disability, a chronic condition, a mental illness, perhaps frail aged with needs. Carers, we define carers as unpaid, so not to be confused with paid carers. And the most common reason we find carers, primary carers, take up caring roles is a family responsibility. So when we talk about definitions of the language, I just want to give you an example. So my friend Kathy is married and her partner has a physical disability. Her partner does require some assistance with ADL's, activities of daily living. Kathy does not always see herself as a carer. However, she does recognise, however, the law does recognise Kathy as a carer. We have both Commonwealth and state legislation in the form of Carer Recognition Acts and also the Victorian Carer Strategy 2018 to 22. The Commonwealth Carer Recognition Act 2010 is intended to increase recognition and consideration of carers and drive much needed cultural and attitudinal change throughout Australian public services agencies and, as a result, the wider community. These acts define a carer as a person who provides unpaid care, assistance or support to a person covered by one of these areas that I talked about, including terminal illness. The Act also ensures that the carer is recognised, valued and respected. Next slide, please. Approximately 1 in 9 Australians are carers, but because many people, like Kathy, view what they are doing in terms of their relationship, they don't see themselves as carers. Some people may prefer not to disclose their role to others. So let's think about some of the people that you know. So growing up, Kathy was also one of Australia's 235,000 carers. That's carers under the age of 25, as she supported and cared for her mother all through her school years and beyond. Perhaps you know a younger carer yourself. So
someone now.
Just a few statistics. In Victoria, there are more than 736,000 carers. Women are more likely to be carers than men. The main source of income for carers is wages, and 7 in 10 working age carers participate in the workforce. Also, the rate of caring generally increases with ageing. And 25 to 30%, that's roughly 500,000 of all Australians, are from CALD backgrounds. CALD is culturally and linguistically diverse carers. I find those stats interesting when I can see that there's real people behind those numbers. Those stats primarily come from 2 reports, the ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, Survey on Disability, Ageing and Care, and the Deloitte Access Economics report. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges. As you would be aware, and many of you listening in today may be carers yourself. You may have been a carer in the past, perhaps, or are currently a carer, or it's highly likely you could be a carer in the future. And there are challenges for carers and impacts. But first of all, many carers do enjoy and express the joys that come from caring. For example, giving back to someone you love and respect, an opportunity to deepen your relationship with that person. And that's much easier to do when you like the person that you care for. The point I want to make is that not every carer loves the person that they care for. So hence using the term loved one needs context and consideration. There are many, many complex family situations. The reality is any one of us may find ourselves in a caring role. So it's perhaps no surprise that carers consistently report low levels of well-being, and this is backed up by studies of health and well-being. Caring does not get easier with time. The presence of a person in the household who requires care can compromise the well-being of other family members and relationships, whether they have a primary care responsibility or not. So we're looking at areas that could be challenging for carers, depending on their situation. And some of these are financial worries. There are many carers who work and have to give up some of their working hours. Their employer may not be as flexible as is required. And in regard to loss of finances, we've got the CALD community, their lack of awareness and missing out on financial supports, for example, carer payment and carer allowance. So there are quite a lot of concerns for carers in maintaining well-being. Some other areas that they may need to pay more attention to or not get enough of could be even sleep and sleep disturbances. They may have raised anxiety and worry. They may be excluded socially. There might be loneliness and isolation also. In fact, one study found that carers had the lowest well-being of any group studied. And during COVID, everything has been exacerbated. There are fewer ways for carers to access the services that make them more resilient. Isolation is the biggest expressed fallout for carers. Requests for counselling have increased, and carers have reported feeling higher levels of anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion. So that's a lot to consider, and good reason to get carers engaged in activities that connect them and support them, and also offer peer support. I can't emphasise enough here the importance of carers giving themselves permission to focus on their own health and well-being. From my own experience and listening to others, they feel selfish about taking time out for themselves. And it can take a lot of convincing for carers to realise that if they fall over, the person that they care for could fall over as well. Next slide, please. The way services are delivered, and some of you may be well aware of these services, but they've changed, and the Commonwealth government now provides funding. There's My Aged Care, that's an entry point, federally funded services for people over 65 or for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders over 50. Then we have the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It's a funded scheme that supports people with a significant and permanent disability to participate in the community. And since April this year, we've very active with the Integrated Carer Support Service, the Carer Gateway. So Carer Gateway is specifically for carers, and there's a Carer Gateway service for service providers. Next slide, please. So it's important to stay connected. As I said, it's important for carers to be engaged and be connected within their community, and also for carers to use services that they are eligible for. So the Carer Gateway is a national service on 1800 422 737. Or you can contact your statewide carer association, depending which state or territory that you are in. For Carers Victoria, we have an online monthly newsletter. It's called The Voice, and I would encourage you, if you are in Victoria and want to know and stay in touch with what's current, is to register for The Voice, and you can receive that monthly. And of course, there's the other usual platforms. For any other further information on some of the areas that I mentioned today, check out Carers Australia website. You'll find it really helpful, and also Carers Victoria website. And that's all from me, and I'll switch it back to Jen. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Helen. It was it really is great to always hear about carers, because as you sort of say, the numbers are quite overwhelming, and to sort of think of those different issues. I liked how you even sort of said that, you know, there's can be a lot of joy in the act of caring as well, but even also then balanced again the fact that someone may be caring for may not necessarily be a loved one. So I thought you made some really very valid points there. And of course, mentioning that whole thing about carer health and well-being, and the point you made about that some carers can sometimes feel a bit as if they're being selfish to take time out for themselves. So I think you made some really key points that were good food for thought there. So I'd like to, very happy to see Professor Ben Smith joining us for the next segment of this presentation. So Helen has given us a great sort of introduction to carers and important resources there. And now Ben is going to, who is a member of our Active Neighbourhoods project team, and Ben is going to talk about a piece of work that we did during a previous project, the Victorian Active Ageing Partnership, and it was all about different models and strategies that Ben investigated in relation to ways that people have managed to develop some physical activity programs to engage carers. So I'll hand it over to you, Ben. Thanks very much, Ben.
So thanks very much, Jen, for that introduction. As Jen's mentioned, in our work within the Victorian Active Ageing Partnership, we were asked to undertake some exploratory research to try and find what kinds of approaches to promoting physical activity and well-being among carers could be implemented by different organisations. And because within the Active Neighbourhoods for Older Australians program, the Neighbourhood Houses and Centres that we're working with are all indicating interest and capacity for providing physical activity programs, we thought it would be helpful for you to consider how your physical activity programs might be delivered in a way that's beneficial for carers. So this focus on carer wellbeing that we were encouraged to pick up on within the Victorian Active Ageing Partnership really grew out of the Victorian Carer Strategy. And the Victorian Carer Strategy is a significant document which described many of the important facts that Helen's just described about the numbers of people who are carers, the significant experiences that carers have, both positively in terms of the rewards that they get as carers, but also a number of the strains and health issues that they face. And the need to identify strategies to more effectively support carers. And one of the first priorities that has been adopted within the Victorian Carer Strategy, you'll see it there in the orange box, what will be different. Victorian carers will have more opportunities to be physically and mentally healthy and to be socially connected to family, friends and their local community. So there's much interest in how physical activity programs might contribute to achieving that purpose. So in this piece of investigative work that we did, we looked into what's been reported in the published literature from studies that have tried different types of physical activity interventions and strategies for carers, and we found articles from the period from 1997 to 2019, 14 studies that were reporting on different kinds of physical activity strategies and the effects they had. And also what we wanted to do was to speak to program providers in Victoria to get some insights into the way they're structuring and delivering their programs and what some of the lessons are that they've gained from doing that. And through contact with Carers Victoria, we identified a number of different organisations offering physical activity and related wellbeing programs, and the ones that I want to spend a little bit of time presenting to you today are the City of Moonee Valley Caring for Carers program, the Villa Maria Support for Carers program, and the Maroondah City Council Pathways for Carers programs, which all included physical activity components. But first, to go to what we found in looking at the published studies, we found, as I said, 14, and in 6 of those, so almost half, the physical activity program was delivered within the carer's home. And often what that involved was somebody visiting the carer, introducing them to some exercises that they could carry out at home on their own, and then following them up with telephone support to encourage them to continue those exercises, to give them ideas about ways they could be modified, and essentially to support them into maintaining a regular pattern of exercise for their own mental and physical well-being. Usually the telephone contact lasted for sort of 4 to 6 months. It usually started on a weekly basis, and then it kind of got tapered, so that it might have been weekly for the first month, and then it got tapered down to once a month for the remaining 3 or 4 months. In one of the programs, we found that telephone contact continued for 12 months. So home-based support, often with the telephone component, was type of physical activity program that we saw reported in a number of studies. Another type of approach to promoting physical activity and well-being among carers was the implementation of what there is referred to as dyadic exercise programs. What that essentially means is undertaking exercise physical activity in pairs. And in all of the examples that we found, these strategies involved a carer of a person with dementia being introduced to a physical activity program that they could do together over time. So the intention is that the person with dementia can benefit from the physical activity, physically, cognitively, as well as the carer. So it was an integrated kind of program. As I said, we found 3 examples of these types of programs. 2 of these involved somebody coming in and supervising the program, so an external person, be it exercise physiologist or a health educator, or somebody coming in and supervising the program over 6 to 8 weeks, and then encouraging the pair to continue to do that independently. In one instance, we found that there was an approach where the carer and the person they were being cared for were introduced to a program just once, which was fully written out, and then they were left to continue to implement that themselves. And the remainder of the examples that we found from looking at the literature, so 5 of the studies described group-based physical activity programs. I have to say, I thought that these would be the most common type of programs that were reported on, but they weren't. 3 of these involved 1 group session per week. 2 of them involved 2 group sessions per week. 4 of them were conducted just over a limited 8 to 12 week period, and 1 of them continued for 6 months. The exercises that were incorporated in these group programs were the sort of exercises that would be familiar to those of you who are providing general exercise types of activities in neighbourhood houses and centres, mixer of aerobic, strength, balance and flexibility exercises, although one of the studies that we found was also using yoga. All of these programs that were reported also, in addition to the physical activity, included a well-being and other well-being and support activities such as education, meditation, and time for socialising among members of the group. There was also one example of a group-based program where the person who was being cared for, in that case, a person with dementia, was invited to take part as well. So it was a kind of like a dyadic approach within a group. So you had the carer and the person who was being cared for. So just to summarise what we found in terms of the impacts of these different strategies, we found consistent evidence from 10 of the 12 studies that measured anything to do with mental well-being, be that stress, mood, depression, anxiety. 10 of those studies there was improvements. So good support, good evidence to show that these different types of physical activity strategies are beneficial for improving care and mental health. Also, in 5 of the 8 studies which are reported on carer burden, perceived burden of the carer in terms of what they were dealing with, they showed improvement. So carer burden was reduced as a result of involvement in these physical activity programs. 4 of the 5, which included some measure of physical capacity, physical functioning, mobility, strength, etc. showed improvement. So evidence also that these can be beneficial physically for carers, and I think that's probably something that's appreciated because of the benefits that then means in terms of their independence and ability to do the things that they want to do personally and in a caring role. So quite a bit of encouraging evidence about the benefits that physical activity programs for carers can offer. Let's turn now to the case studies that we identified in Victoria. I want to talk a little bit about the three that I've mentioned. The first one, the City of Moonee Valley Caring for Carers program. This involves a weekly physical activity class and a monthly walking group that's delivered within the Caring for Carers program at Moonee, the City of Moonee Valley. The weekly physical activity class is held at a neighbourhood centre, and it includes strength, yoga and Pilates exercises and meditation. And the monthly walking group meets for 1 hour and makes use of a local riverside trail. It's open to carers of all types who live in the area. Average age of those who attend is 55 years. About 60% of those who attend are female, so it's reasonably well mixed in terms of gender. It's free of charge and it's available on an ongoing basis. They offer refreshments afterwards, which is an opportunity for people to hang around and socialise. They promote the program firstly through word of mouth, but also they advertise in newsletters, and they disseminate information about the program through their other support services as well. They've found that the success of the program has been improved by basically trying different types of physical activity and learning as they go, inviting feedback from carers about what they enjoy and what they find beneficial. And a major contributor to the success of it has been the formation of connections between the carers who've been attending the program. Most challenge that they report was a limited confidence among some of the carers to undertake physical activity, and the fact that they had different interests among the carers, so they had to try and accommodate those within the program. The Villa Maria Support for Carers program incorporates some similar elements to the City of Moonee Valley program, but also some different types of activities. This program was offered within their broader support for carers initiative. It included gym-based exercises, which are supported by an exercise physiologist, so that's one-to-one support in a gym for 1 hour, and yoga and mindfulness classes. The yoga and mindfulness classes aren't ongoing. They're offered just in short blocks over several weeks, and they're adapted to whatever the needs of the participants are. The programs are available to carers of all types who live in the region, free of charge. Again, interestingly, in this one, they're able to offer respite care, which the other ones aren't able to offer. So that obviously supports participation by carers. Word of mouth, again, has been the main way that participants have learnt about this program, but also some people have received referral through aged care assessment services and other agencies. They don't offer social activities in addition to the gym-based exercise or the yoga, but they've found that participants have formed friendships anyway, and those kinds of networks have been a important benefit that the participants have reported. Something else that they also highlighted, and other providers have mentioned this too, is that allowing flexibility for carers to not attend when they can't without it in any way affecting their eligibility to continue to be involved is an important thing, because as you would understand, carers have a lot on their plate and they need to respond to the needs often of the person they're looking after, and they're not always able to sort of attend regularly. So allowing them flexibility is a valuable thing. The final example I want to discuss with you is a walking program offered within the City of Maroondah Pathways for Carers program. This is a walking group that's held twice a month for an hour. And in this program, as you can see in the image, they intentionally go outdoors. They find nature trails, which are refreshing and good for mental health of the carers as well as their physical health. They offer their programs to carers of people with a disability and a mental illness specifically. The participants tend to be middle and older aged. Again, there's no cost to them. They do get together at a cafe after the walk, so they encourage people to hang around to mingle and make connections. An innovative feature of this program is that they invite a guest walker, and the guest walker is usually somebody who's come from an agency that provides some kind of service or support relevant to the carer. So they integrate an information provision component into it, and the guest walker might give a short presentation at the beginning and then would join the walk so that the participants can ask some questions and have a further chat with them as they walk along. Again, like the Villa Marie program, participants are free to attend whenever they can or not, as the case may be. And what they've found is beneficial in this program is that they've created an informal environment where carers feel comfortable to sort of mingle and meet others. And, you know, the sort of you know, a good sort of social climate that is inclusive and not too pressurised. So, to wrap up, some of the lessons for practice that we've gained from speaking to the providers of physical activity programs for carers, I think promoting the programs through multiple different channels, through referral services, through newsletters, also first and foremostly through word of mouth. That's the number one way of raising awareness that all of the providers mentioned. Allowing flexible attendance, as I've said, consulting the participants about the activities that they like doing and where they like to do them, and importantly, creating socialisation opportunities, time for people to really chat and get to know each other so that they're getting the social benefits and the opportunity to know that they're not alone in their caring role and have the opportunity to benefit from support from others and learn from others in terms of the way they're managing their caring experiences. So to wrap up, there's, I think, great opportunities in supporting carer wellbeing through physical activity programs, and often these programs can be accompanied by different kinds of educational and social activities as well. And the ones that we saw in Victoria, they're all delivered on a group basis, but when we look at the literature, we also see that there are models that can be implemented where there's home-based support that's provided for carers, which I guess is the most flexible option for them. So happy to have the opportunity to share this learning with you, and hope it gives you some ideas about ways that you might offer programs that engage carers.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ben. And I think that's a really important piece of work. I know when you were doing this work within the Victorian Active Ageing Partnership, it took quite a lot of work to actually uncover some physical activity programs specifically targeted to carers. I just wondered, to a certain extent, I was interested in the different examples you gave of City of Moonee Valley and so on. Did you ever find out whether the different initiatives were generated from people within the organisation or in response to a request from carers? I just wondered how some of these programs actually come about or begin, given that, it took a lot of searching to actually uncover some in Victoria.
It's a really good question, Jen. I don't recall any stories that came out about the origins of these different kinds of programs. I mean, Helen might be able to share a little bit about what she's observed about the way that programs for carers evolve over time. I mean, I could imagine that it starts with one type of initiative, might be a support group that then considers there are different things that we can do together. Maybe physical activity, maybe a walking group would be a good way of us staying connected together and doing something for ourselves and feeling better. I could see it working like that. I used to be a carer support worker many years ago, so I have some insights into the way that carers networks can work, and the interest that there is often in finding an ongoing way to enable people to connect together. I don't know if you have any further thoughts on that, Helen.
Yes, Ben, carer support groups are very proactive, I find, through my experiences working with carer support groups in the past and currently. They quite often seek out opportunities for, you talked about the walking groups where they incorporate a guest speaker. Carers Victoria has attended as guest speakers to some of those types of formats, and I think they're becoming more and more popular. And I think the more we're raising awareness as to the value of physical exercise and getting out of the house with support, I think word of mouth is the key here to promoting this. So yeah, it's exciting. It's great.
Mm.
And Helen, in your experience, are you finding that recognition of carers is growing, you know, even over the last, say, 5 years or so?
I think that look, our policy department work really hard with government and also in an effort to raise it in the wider community, raise awareness. I think that every service agency is now more in tune. Yes, I do, Jen.
At the moment?
Carers, and there's much more inclusiveness. And you know, one of the things I always say is if you're working with, be it your client, that your carer, the behind every client is a carer, and that could be your best asset, you know, in your work. So for workers, promoting the value of carers, I think, is critical as well.
Yes, just a note to people watching, we just turned off our cameras. We're just, the network was running a bit slow, so don't think we've gone away. Just a couple of other questions. If anyone else has a question that they want to pop into the question box, please do so. Ben, another question for you was that the issue of cost. It seemed like most of those case examples you talked about, they were all free or no cost to the participants, and just, you know, again, that issue of cost is such an important one with regards to access. Would you like to comment on that a bit further?
Yeah, it is. That's a notable thing about all of those programs. One of them included yoga too. Yoga is one of the more expensive types of physical activity often, but it was great that that was subsidised because you know, carers are carrying a lot of expenses related to their work and often a little bit reticent to do things for themselves. So making it free of charge, I think, removes a pretty significant hurdle. Each of those programs was, you know, auspiced by a major organisation, 2 city councils and Villa Maria Catholic Services. So having that kind of backing enabled them to provide it at no cost to the carers. And so you'd be thinking, as say, as a neighbourhood house or centre, what partnership might be developed to provide a little bit of backup funding or to reduce the costs of some elements of the program so that it could be offered at no or low cost to participants.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it seems to have, you know, regardless of the group, you know, that may be involved, it certainly is important to make that the issue of cost not a problem or a barrier to access. Helen, another question for you. You mentioned that sometimes carers who from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds may be at a slight disadvantage because they may not be aware of some of the resources and the support that may be available from governments and other organisations. Is, like for example, as say Carers Victoria or Carers Australia, would any of the information be translated to other languages, or would interpreters be readily available? Would you know?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jen, and a very important question and information to share. There's a lot of translated material on Carers Australia website and also Carers Victoria website. And of course, the interpreter service is available for carers when they call in, also through the Carer Gateway. So I think it's really covered very well. I think there still remains a barrier in regard to their cultural beliefs sometimes, that they don't seek out help, and so there's those factors to consider as well.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Helen. And just one other thing I'd like to ask you, Helen. You mentioned that some carers don't like to wish to disclose the fact that they are in a caring role. Why would that be?
So there are some carers, like my friend Kathy, who are in a relationship with another person, and they see that their relationship is the important, or the important aspect here, and that the community need and workers need to acknowledge that that needs to be given the respect and understanding. So first and foremost, they're a partner to a person, and perhaps secondly, they may consider that they're actually caring for the partner. But it can be a very sensitive subject.
Yeah.
So therefore, yes, many people choose not to disclose. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, one thing that came through very much in your presentation, Helen, was just the diversity of carers, range of backgrounds, ages, so it's really mindful to just keep that diversity in mind, and that came through, Ben, also in the point you made about the city of Moonee Valley, and one thing they struggled with slightly was the diversity of needs within the group that they had doing the exercise, and then the walking. Would you like to comment a bit more on that, Ben, with regards to just that sort of, in a way, catering for that diversity?
Yeah, I think anticipating it is obviously helpful. One of the questions in relation to the programs that are being offered for carers are whether carers like to be in a mixed group of people of different ages, in different types of caring roles, or whether they have a preference for being in a group of people who are having an experience that's more like theirs. It might be that they're caring for somebody with dementia or with a mental illness or disability. The experiences that are reported were largely to go for more of a mixed group for the ones that we spoke to, but I was a little bit surprised by that, because I know that people, again, referring back to earlier experiences, get an enormous amount from knowing that there are other people who are going through experiences that are like theirs. It is a transformative thing for people who are caring, who are giving their all to a role, carrying great stresses, to know that it's not just that fate has bequeathed this on them, but there are many others who are going through it too, and that lightens their load. So I sort of thought that they might be a little bit more homogenous than they were, but they were mixed. Again, Helen might have a broader perspective on that in terms of how you sort of set up carers groups in relation to their diversity.
I do find that interesting, Ben, that outcome, because a lot of our groups, and Carers Victoria it supports a lot of groups, and we've mapped a lot of the groups that are in carer groups that are within Victoria, and many of them are condition specific. So carers of people with a mental illness, and even the age groups. So carers of children with disability. I work closely with a group, and while the ages are different, they're all carers of someone with a mental illness. But the group members are different ages, you know, anywhere from about late 30s to an older carer, which is very common. So, yeah, perhaps a lot of that can also be lack of groups within a region.
Yeah.
You know, what are my choices, perhaps? And also it's a fit, it's a match, isn't it? You know, you could attend a group and really enjoy yourself, and it may have a variety of cohorts in it. Yeah. But carer support groups and peer support is just so valuable, and it's not for everyone, but I would certainly encourage people to perhaps look at what's in around for them, and just perhaps give it a try, test the waters.
Well, look, on that note, I think that's a good message to end on, Helen. And so, look, I'll thank you very much, and thank you, Ben, for your presentation as well. There's no further questions for today, so we'll finish there. But I really appreciate it, Helen, for your input today. That's been really worthwhile and most interesting. And I'm sure there's lots of neighbourhood houses and centres out there doing some great work with carers, whether in the way of physical activity programs or in running support groups from your houses and centres. So keep up that good work. And for others, hopefully today's webinar has given you some food for thought with regards to what you might consider doing in the future in relation to the carers in your community. And as Helen would say, Carers Australia and all the different organisations in the various states and territories, I'm sure a wealth of information if you happen to need more information about carers. So look, on that note, I'll say thanks, Ben, thank you, Helen, and thank you our background team with IT in the back end of this webinar, Annika and Darren. And on that note, I wish everyone a good afternoon and the next couple of months or the next couple of weeks as we get to the end of the year. So thanks very much for joining, everyone, and goodbye.